Women Talking made the rounds at some festivals in 2022 and is now getting a wide release. Now, the story is very dialogue-driven, but is it worth checking out? Do nothing, stay and fight, or leave. Those are the choices the women of an isolated religious community grapple with as they work to reconcile a brutal reality within their faith. Now, there's a horrifying truth that comes to light at the beginning of the movie, which then creates the impetus for a meeting of all of this women in this religious sect. They decide to have a vote to determine their next move, but when the vote is kind of split evenly, several families are chosen to then discuss the pros and cons to then arrive at a decision for the entire community. Now, they're under a time constraint as the women are working to come to a decision before the men return home. Now, this has a stellar cast with Claire Foy, Rooney Mara, Jessie Buckley, Frances McDormand, Judith Ivey, Sheila McCarthy, and even Ben Wishaw. Now, as I'd said, this is a very dialogue-heavy drama that feels a ton like a stage play as we watch the discourse happen amongst the women. I love the back and forth that's created by the witty and smart writing. The dialogue is biting and raw at times, stinging a lot of truths and hurts. And then there are even brief moments of humor that are woven throughout, but they're not played up for comedic relief, but instead feel very natural within the course of a conversation, especially given the personalities of all those that are involved. The discussions are tense and even forceful, but there are always level heads that prevail to temper emotional outbursts and get the topic back into focus. Now, this doesn't have much in the way of action or even movement, other than the women walking around the loft of a barn as they speak. Now, sometimes we'll see some flashback imagery or watch some of the younger kids play out in the field, and all this really does help to establish the setting for how they live. It's remote, removed, and even isolated, and there doesn't seem to be much connection with the outside world, making the weight of the choices all the more difficult. I really enjoyed how the camera captured the conversations too. Most of the time we're able to see 2 or 3 faces as someone is speaking so that their reactions to whatever is being said are captured. But then when it's needed for emotional engagement, close-up shots are used to really show the hurt, fear, anger, or really even any other feeling in the character's eyes. I mean, it's powerful and engaging, especially as the tension mounts as the clock winds down and that decision must be made. The story was inspired by some true events, which then makes this a very horrifying narrative. I mean, what's discussed, it's brutal and disgusting, and it's made even more so because it really happened. Now, the pacing for this is patient, but because of the intensity of the dialogue and the emotions, this never feels slow. It's an hour and 44 minutes, and I was riveted. The story grabbed hold of me, and then it refused to let me go, especially as more and more horrors come to light during the discussions. The conversations, they can be frustrating to hear, especially when it feels like this would be a pretty clear-cut decision. But one of the choices is literally uprooting these women from everything they've ever known and then placing them on an unknown path that they're most likely very ill-prepared for. I mean, they can take care of themselves, but they're not really ready to face the outside world. And I love how this adds another layer of complication. And then the story doesn't stop there. It continues to play devil's advocate amongst the cast. So, when one person brings up a solution and makes some solid arguments, another will then bring up counterpoints with equally valid and compelling arguments. There was a point during this that the feeling I was getting reminded me of 12 Angry Men, where the discussions are passionate and weighty, and then extremely important. I mean, the outcome will affect a life, and in this case, many, many lives. Because this tackles a multi-generational story, the inclusion of actors of widely varied ages really helps to round out the narrative. We got the wisdom and patience of the older generation, and that's not really to say that they're compliant or unwilling to act. We've also got the fiery passion of that middle generation. I mean, most of them are in their mid-20s to maybe early 30s, and they're more apt to act on emotion. And then we have the children. Now, some are teens and a few are tweens, and they observe more than anything, really just soaking in all of the words that are going to help to shape and form them for years to come. And that's especially dependent on the outcome of the group's decision. There are some very powerful themes also that are examined during this story. We see faith, forgiveness, there's obedience, honor, regret, education, and even tradition. I mean, each of these makes its way into the conversations, and every single one of them has deep meaning and ramifications on the decisions. Now, for me, the standouts in this were Claire Foy, Jessie Buckley, Rooney Mara, Judith Ivey, and Ben Wishaw. I mean, the intensity that emanates from both Foy and Buckley is powerful and heartbreaking to watch. And then their performances, I mean, they just really stuck with me. They have a haunting quality to them because of the passion that they bring to the screen. They're also hard to tear your eyes away from because of their command of a scene. What we get is palpable and visceral. I mean, sometimes not even using words to just burn a feeling into your soul. Ben Wishaw is also a great addition, as he's really the only adult male we ever see interacting during the story. There are one or two others that have very tiny roles, but Wishaw adds a layer of complexity and even strife to the conversations that the women are having. He's gentle and hesitant. I mean, he's even stumbling and stuttering at times. But there's also this genuineness in his eyes that showcases a ton of compassion. He has some really good chemistry with the rest of the cast, which makes him endearing in his own way. Now, I loved a lot of the ambient sounds we get that add a layer of calm to the underlying tension. Because the setting's out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by fields and hills, bugs can be heard just filling the air with their sounds. Now, it kind of creates an atmosphere that's chill, and then it's in direct contrast to the direness of the situation and the decisions the women are making. I was really blown away by this movie. I mean, I hadn't seen a trailer going in, so I didn't know what to expect, and the performances are captivating and powerful. They're filled with fear, rage, and hope. I mean, this would feel right at home on a stage, with the conversations driving ferocity and engagement. While the underlying story is one of sadness, the narrative provides glimmers of hope at what could be, showcasing the true power these women possess once they're not afraid to discuss their circumstances. There's no sex or nudity, some profanity, and some violence, including sexual assault and descriptions of assault. I give Women Talking 4.5 out of 5 couches. So what's a good dialogue-driven movie that you enjoy? Now, because my favorite playwright is David Mamet, there are a few of his movies that I really love simply because of their dialogue. But let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.